Dorje Janchen Elonaroram Marva Mila
Tene ta tanda kasing penchi la kari shubare se nam pente tai jegom de chu ngandu rimba ngandu tangbo tene sem chol ne yapo tawa di kor de shubare la ta to gonga kapsu shaya de nipa kusulayin jogam chu nguyi rimba la sam tene kusula senkente kusulu senkente tumi rabo jela kogi yorela tene tumi chene nguni ge ngaranzo gom senkente kande jege tingen sen kongi yore sena ngaran la mepache sardu zuni dupo je yakpo la zuni gambaribi sena ya mare yepache mepa la zuni gambaribi sena ya mare la ona kari gambaribi sena ngaran la semke netan la kari yepate tietardu ngohipi tainto nyambar yopa ti tainto gambaribi la tini teacher na tanda ngaranzo ta chogyam chimbo gombe kasala gomje mainla tamal ji hipasina chitang ngaranzo kari yepi senji nelu gudendo nyambar yopa yimbisina tamal ji hipasin kinta nyume hipasin kinte zochu hira mazeba koran kari yepi tendo nyambar yopa ta tindejila gogi yorela nyume hipa ta tamalji hipa sungi yore la tini teacher na tanda kei tachi mamboji shene gamba mayimba zopju mamboji tangne gamba mayimba koran kante yimba di taindo ya batela jogam sungi yore la tati mengo cheparton papa jogam chu ngui yirimba la tati la desindrabo namba ni yore tene ladawe mengo gagone lungo yesumje nelu ngotre patang Hinji be mengo la ten sen rik susu ngotre ba ni le ta tangbo lada be mengo lada se na teka la ta kora ne tang ten de nyambri ka pa te la lada be mengo se tene luge nelu ngoge nelu yege nelu de nelu sam ngotre ba ta ti teka la ngohi ba se tene hinji be mengo singhe te tene tige number takpa te kande yimba number mada pa te kande yimba te susu hinji ne mengo la tene ta tanda namto ke lepe cha tulbe ki cha te la samsung ge yoba te ta namto ke male pa tangbo te la ripa sung ge yoba la ta te sem tindere pangja ripa tindere sin susuru ngote pa ni le sa ta te na ne tangbo la da me ngo te songre.
Now, in our past few sessions, we have been talking about the analytic meditation of the Pandita. This is the preliminary steps, and so this is the first part. It is first we need to look for the mind. We need to see well what the mind is, and so it is describing that subject. And so what we've come to this afternoon is the second main part of the instructions, and this is the main practice, the second part under the teachings of the steps of the teachings on the main part of the practice, the resting meditation of a kusulu. And when we say a kusulu, this is a Sanskrit word, and what it means is someone who leads a very simple, easy life. And so what this means is that when we are meditating, when we are in samadhi, what is the samadhi we need? What is the meditation that we need? You know, is this something where we, I've got to make something new? Is that how it is? Or it's something where it's not so good, it's pretty bad, and I've got to make it into something good? Is that how it is? That's not how it is. That's not what it is. Nor is it something where we take something that exists and make it into nothing. That's not what it is. Well then, what is it that we need to do? It is just recognizing the way our mind is as it is. It's just recognizing it and then resting in equipoise, resting evenly on that. And so that is what we call in the instructions on Mahamudra, it's what we call ordinary mind. So generally, you know, this is just how our mind is. And whatever the essence of our mind is like, we just rest in that. Just rest evenly in that. Sometimes we call it the natural state. And when we say the natural state, that just means we don't change it in any way. There's no need to alter it. Just as it is, we just rest evenly in it as it is. And so that's what we mean when we call it the natural state, or when we say it is the ordinary mind. And so for that reason, it's not something where we need to do a lot of things to it. We don't need to try to figure out what it is. We don't need to, Rinpoche didn't say that. We don't need to do anything to it. We don't need to alter it in any way. We just need to rest, just as it is. And so that's what we call resting. So these are the wonderful instructions on just resting here. And these wonderful instructions on resting have two different parts. These parts are pointing out the nature of body, speech, and mind by means of the instruction in resolving. And then the second is pointing out dualistic mind and awareness one by means of the instruction in distinguishing. And so here the first of these, resolving. Actually, what we mean by resolving here is that we're just resting directly in the way things are. Just however it is, we're resting right in that. And so what is, however it is that the body is, however it is that the speech is, however it is that our mind is, we just recognize that. And then after we recognize that, we just rest in it. The second part is the pointing out mind and awareness by means of the instruction of distinguishing. And so we need to distinguish. We need to know, when is our meditation really pure? When is it not pure? And see, these are the instructions that help us differentiate. When is it pure? And when there are a lot of thoughts, when it is stained by a lot of thoughts, then we call it mind. And when it is not sullied by a lot of thoughts, then that is what we call awareness. And so these are the instructions that help us say, that is what mind is. That is what awareness is. And so we have these two sections, and the first section is the section on resolving.
Tene ta tela yang jirdo ta mengo rang lu su gong de se na tene hini jidang ge hini dong lang dong namba ni be na ne tene hini se na yang da lang dong se na yang da tene te ka la tene san ji ne lu gong do ta tingang la nyam bre yo tene ta ti ge mengo da bo je sung re la tene te sung re te yin na yang hini dong lang dong ni de ta tan da mixal ge hini ge te de na sung yo ma re la tene hini te si san la ne sa ya bo je ngö sai na tene pe tan da pengre som ba re la tan da tene tanda tapota hinam jarga tene soja chimbu nyume teni salwa nam to sona tangbo dangwa kanya manawa chi lu yapo sangne lu su tangbo sangne tene senji yata ndabo kanya masonwa tene lu su de nima khahi jela yana dega se de na ya tene sanla nesa yungu yore so nesa togi yore song yore la tienda bo sana tangbo te lusuk la teni na yanda mena rang senji gomtong gomtal teni na yanda te teni nesa ngusen ba kandi si nege do teni neba te ngusen ba ta chitang ke mengo ke teka la njokpo teni ta gomba ngote ne gomba te ape chorwanda bo je yapu yo re te yinaya te cham ke tempo me banda bo khahe la teni ngara ngote nang nyung ngote nang ne ngonche nyung te ti je la hira den de mi hira mandu senken da bo ta tinde khahe la te ji yal so wanda bo ta khahe ngö ma zin banda bo khahe ki ta ta si ngote de sem ke chorwanda bo la jor so wanda bo ta tinde yung yo la junsin teacher na te si hine ge ne cha ta long thong ge sar cha tin zu ya bo je ngö sai te gen do ribi je be ngi hi de ya bo chong na ti ge tingen san pengre so banda bo yo la tene teacher na tene chitang ge tanda hine ji tingen sai te si ne san da bo yo na ya ti pengge yo re hine do long thong ni le che par kar yo re se na sem de tempo teme nepa te la long thong ge hira gongjung ki hira to tujung ki hira to sonjung ki hira kanya misal ke mepa tela hine se ge ore te non to mambora mepa tene sente tala nguzum mepa tongcha ndabo je ngona non to rangin ki hewe ngondo nepa tela hine se ge ore la ta tela longtong se du ti ge nelu de yapo salvo hine tene te seng ne tang te te ba he ne gomba te la long thong se ge yo la te chana tang bo sar cha he do men na yong ko ne cha te chi yo ne ya bu yong yo
Now, in terms of these instructions here, in terms of general instructions, we have instructions on tranquility meditation, and on insight meditation, and so here. But here in these instructions, whether you call it tranquility meditation or whether you call it insight meditation, here we are just looking at the mind as it is and resting in it. So these are the instructions that are given here. There's not a particular discussion of tranquility or insight separately. But here, so here the tranquility is not directly taught. However, if we teach it, then it helps us develop the stable part of our mind, and so for that reason, I think it's kind of helpful to go over the tranquility meditation a bit. Dapo Tashi Namgyel taught in his book Clarifying the Natural State. In his instructions there, before he gives any instructions at all, he just says that we need to sit and talks about how the posture of the body. Our body posture, it talks about how we need to keep our bodies straight, and doesn't say anything about the points of the mind, and says if we just sit for a few days and practice these points of the body, then the mind will naturally come to rest. The mind will naturally become stable. This stable aspect of the mind will naturally come out. And so here, in terms of our mind, you can just do it by way of following these instructions on the body. Or if we talk about how to meditate with the mind, this can help us really develop the stable aspect of our mind. It can help us identify what is the stable aspect of our mind. So what is the staying in our mind? And so now, a lot of people have come to me. They've had their the pointing out instructions. I've even given the mind pointing out instructions sometimes. And usually when you have the pointing out instructions, there's some sort of a feeling, and it's good. And that's all fine. But it's not very stable. And so when people have come to me and talking about the pointing out they've had, or when I've given the pointing out instructions, then a lot of people come to me and they say later they don't really remember it or can't really remember it. It wasn't all that helpful in the end. It just kind of disappeared at some point. And so need to be able to really identify what it is. What is the stable aspect of the mind? We need to sort of recognize it. And so sometimes people will say that from the pointing out of the instructions that their mind that they did have some sort of a change in feeling in their mind. But for this reason, it is really important for us first to sort of know what is tranquility meditation, what is insight meditation, and what is good meditation. And so if we understand all of this, it'll be very helpful for our meditation, and so that is why I think it is it would be very helpful to develop the stable aspect of the stability aspect through our tranquility meditation. Now you might wonder what the difference between tranquility meditation and insight meditation is, and when we talk about tranquility meditation, that is just resting stably. Whether there isn't any particular wisdom there. We don't really have much of the wisdom of contemplating, or the wisdom of listening, or the wisdom of contemplating, or the wisdom of meditating. It's not really present. We're just resting there peacefully. There aren't a whole lot of thoughts. There aren't any thoughts. We don't really recognize the mind. We're just sort of hanging out in the empty aspect of the mind. And so in the empty aspect of the mind, all the thoughts are basically have been pacified. And so when we're just resting within that, that is the tranquility, the shamatha meditation. When we know what the nature of the mind is, when we know the essence, the nature, when we know the way the mind is, then that is insight meditation. And so that helps us develop the that insight meditation has a real clear aspect to it. But even if we don't, and if we don't have that clear aspect of insight, then it will be beneficial for us to develop the stable aspect of tranquility.
Tene ta tela ya hinila chitanga gomtap tanda tei tamchi ganando sona tenchi tan teme la gomtap mambo song yo rete yina ya tanda sen ne pe tap gui na ne kasing huma te chi hubare de te hyona te je pembo dabu yungre samba dabu de la tene te ya sen ne pe tap gui na tangbo kahi chi hyona tene te ya tangbo nyokwa sungre la tene tikapsula somlo mambo matangwa che somlo mambo matang ya tene sem ke salcha ting gogi yo mare sem te jiang me pa don da bo re se ga mare la te la sem ke salcha yo re de te la nom to mambo me pa yin tun tun te la nom to ke jeng me pa je ga la nyam bre yo na te si yo na nom to me pa sale ya pa te la njok pa sum yo re te yin tun tun indu te la te njok pa rin do ga samba ji ngun sing re ti ta indu nyam bre yo pa ka so la ta sen ne pe tak na ne tang bo njok pa re la tene te yapo je tang mangbo tang ka hi njok pa se ne yo se ta ti njok se ne yo se wan da yo pa re la ta te yo ne ni ba te kan de se na jun dun njok pa se na ti yin tun tun ke tene chom yo yang tun tun ke chom yo de tene ti ge compare to mando wala compare to ndo ke chdo jun dun njok pa se te chi jeng reng de ta tene te ta yi ke chorwa ti ten do te chi jeng reng de ta jun dun njok pa se ge la ta te ta jun dun njok pa la ko khara ra njok pa ke ten ne na ya bo de mani na tene lang song te la je mani ba nam to yin to chwa yung se ge yung se ge te la kare gu gre se na nga nam to chwa song ta gam de ya po yung man du san sen la je pan da bo ta sen ma ga wan da bo te po pa hyum ba da bo ka yin gu ma re la ya kon ro na kan ro la sen de tombo gam tene nam to yin da ge ji le ju so na ti ji ti la mun thai ni tene tang yo na yon de ge yo ma re la te kare gu gre se na te ngo hi ta tanda ne so tanda ne ma so ta tanda chon chon do ga yin da le yin du do ga so ba ji ngo se ne yin du do ga so ba te la che yin do te du po ri so ba chen da bo ya ma so yin do na chi po do ya po do so ba ya ma yin ba tene te la kare se gre se na tene len tin jo pa se na tene ti tai ni chor pa te ta se na to kan de chog do na pa yu tene huma gong ge de chor yo pa te la len tin jo pa sung ge yo la tene ta ti yo tap number som jo pa jun dun jo pa len tin jo pa se na ta tin de se ne hin ni chi ting en sen gom na tene ne sha ya bo yung ge yo re.
When we talk about the instructions on tranquility meditation, there are the instruction on tranquility meditation with attributes and without attributes, but leaving that sort of discussion aside, there are many different methods for talking about for this, and among them are the 9 methods for resting the mind. The other day I mentioned the 9 methods for resting the mind, and today I thought that if I talked about the first few of them, it would be beneficial. So I'll talk about the first few of the 9 methods for resting the mind. The first of the 9 methods for resting the mind is just called resting. Sometimes it's also translated as placing or resting. It's just resting. And so it's just resting when our mind does not think all that much. Just let it rest, and then so we just rest within the aspect of our mind, and we don't really worry about it much. It's just within that, we just let the mind rest in the clear aspect of the mind. There are not a whole lot of thoughts, and this goes on for a very short time. It's just a short time. We just rest evenly in it for a little ways, and then it's this clear, very clear, crisp sort of feeling, and that's just resting. It's resting for a short time. And so that is what we call resting. And so then when we rest for a short time, we rest and then we realize, we recognize, I was resting. So we recognize that. So that is the first stage of resting. And we do this over and over again. And when we do it over and over again, we just sort of let our mind rest. You can say rest or place. It's sort of the same thing. You let your mind be there. You just put your mind there. So just rest the mind there. And then after we've put our mind there, after we've rested our mind there, then comes the second one. The second stage of resting the mind is continually resting. And so we meditate in resting, we meditate for a short time, and then a short time. And if we just keep on doing this over and over again, sometimes it doesn't really develop. And so we need to make it develop. We need to increase the resting. And so we just try to get it go a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Now, if you can get it to immediately just be great and long and drawn out, then that is wonderful, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes thoughts happen. It's possible that thoughts might happen when you're meditating. So they will happen. Thoughts will happen when you're meditation. And when you do have a thought arise when you're meditation, you shouldn't say, "Oh man, another thought." And you shouldn't get upset about it. You shouldn't think, "Oh, I'm terrible." You shouldn't get discouraged about your meditation in any way. You shouldn't think that you're not doing it right or anything. That's not necessary at all. On the other hand, when you're meditating, if this thought happens and then the thought goes and then it just goes off and you sort of follow it along on its merry little way, that doesn't really work very well either. You can't just keep on letting the thoughts go or keep on following the thoughts. Rather, that's not okay either. Rather, you need to recognize what's happening. You need to say, "Oh, I'm not resting." And then I was resting and then I had a thought. And I got distracted, I thought. Then you recognize, "Oh, I wasn't resting there and I got distracted." And you don't see that distraction as a fault. It's not a problem. You just go back to how you were resting before. Just go back and you don't think, "Oh, that wasn't bad," or "that wasn't good." You just go back and rest again. And so this is what we call, it's the third step, it's called retaking and placing again. So retaking the mind and resting it or placing it again. So that is the third stage. And so here there's the thought that comes up, and then you just put the thought aside and you go back to where you were before. You retake it and you replace your mind. You rest yourself in that way. And so in this way we have these three methods. We have resting, continually resting, and retaking and replacing your mind. And so these are three good methods to work with your tranquility meditation. And if you work with them, this will help you, the stable aspect of your meditation, really develop.
다 디카드나라 샘게 내lun다보다 샘게 ngoonda보라 다기요 말라 고란 내차 조세게 히네 숭기요라 테네 다 대다부게 히네데 라 몬테니 검베캅슬라 갑갑라 테네 제 nomto 망보이야바 살보 메바 나보다 텐데 용기요라 테네 데라 님보니 요레 님보니 순데텔라 둘와르세바타 히와르세바니 요레라 테네 둘와르세바타 히와르세바텔라 테네 데제 nomto 망보초 데가 마토 반다보 텐데 용갑라 테네 nomto 텐조 다 세타 ngaran chongni ta partola nomto mamboji sudan 테네 테 탄다 메바 다 텐데브 히라 메바 제 ngaran 그 chorwala nomto de kalchembo imban다보지 som기 요레데 이나에 데 kalchembo 마임바 제 펜토 히라 메바 텐다 메바 데 nomto rakpatin데 짠 테네 짠다 티 메시바가 테네 nomto rakpat mam보지나 테네 자시 히왈라가서나 센 넘버 이메메 니몬 체베 트라나 네송레라 센 노인가 온도 히로와텔라 테네 딱파 니몬바 mam보지그레 니몬바 치와한다 보지게 바다 진생긴 치와가 바다라 예바나기 니몬바 치와가 바다라 요레라 테네 티처나 티 nomto de yapo mare somne tesi ti nomto tenzo ke 짠다 보지 somotana 디기 양저도 샘데 파 돌니 당보 때 샘데 라마메 반다보지 정나 디기 젠데 망보성나 디기 팽기가 바제다 드니니바 히워르세바랄라 히워르세바데 칸데르스는 양저도 타 연다데 드니 띵엔젠 검나 베 산라 사차야 보이야바 산라 히와야 보용게야바 산라 네차야 보용게야바 드니 텔라데니 산라 라왕야 보이야바 용게야바라 소바다 딘데 페얀다 보용니 용도 삼나 드니 디게 페얀도 구바만 보삼나 디게 산라 드니 히니검발라 가와도 쪼아만 보지게 요래라 드니 가와도 쪼아만 보지발라 드니 펜도 쳔보 용게 요래라 드니 디게 쳔나 드니 다티산 라와메 반다보 쳔나 디니엠볼라 돌로르제바다 히워르제바니 보디 제나 다티게 팽게 요래
When we're meditating like this, we're not really looking at the essence of the mind. We're not looking at the nature of the mind. It's just primarily the stability here. We're just primarily working with the stability of the mind. And that is what we are practicing when we do tranquility meditation. And when we do this regularly, sometimes when we're meditating, we will have a lot of thoughts arise. We won't have a lot of clarity in our mind. And when this happens, there are two different types of remedies for this situation. These two remedies are called taming and pacifying. So these are the two remedies, taming and pacifying. So sometimes we have a whole lot of thoughts happening and we can't stop them. They can't stop at that time. And so at that point we need to think to ourselves, well, from the time I was little until now, I've had all of these thoughts. There have been so many thoughts that I've had, and they really haven't brought me any benefit. They haven't helped me in any way. Sometimes we think, oh, these thoughts are important. They feel like they're really important, but they aren't really all that important. They aren't important. Important. And so in that way, we see that they really haven't helped us in any way. There's really no point in all of these thoughts. We see the faults of all the thoughts. We look at them as being faults. And then this is something that the great master Shantideva talked about. He said that people who have a lot of thoughts are in their minds are caught in the fangs of the afflictions. They're caught in the fangs of the disturbing emotions. And so if there is someone who has a lot of thoughts, then it's like someone who has a lot of thoughts happening, you also have a lot of the disturbing emotions also happening at the same time. And so it's like you're caught in their fangs. It's like you're in the fangs of a leopard or some sort of carnivorous beast. And so it's in this way you're caught in the fangs of the afflictions. And so you need to look at it this way and see that, oh, these thoughts are not good. They're a problem. And so this is the method of taming our mind, of thinking about the faults of our mind. We realize that at first we don't have a lot of control over our mind. We don't have control over our mind, and that is not good. But then after we realize that we don't have control over our mind, we think about the benefits of doing tranquility meditation. We think that by all of these methods that we'll develop real samadhi, real deep holding. We'll develop a real clarity. Our tranquility will develop well. This will be good. This will be beneficial for us. And if we can do this, then we can gain control over our mind. And we see how beneficial it is, how great a purpose this has. And so we think about this over and over again. And when we think about it over and over again, then we get excited about it. We get excited about meditation. We get joyous about our meditation, and this will bring us a great benefit. And so in this way, this will bring us control over our mind. And so if we find ourselves in a place where we don't have any control over our mind, we should try practicing these methods of taming and pacification, and these should help.
다디게 단다 센네비 탑고이 노네 ngāndabotige 데지 검나 다티라 펜토 침보 용리와레라 다티 히네기 네세지 tela senji nelu hibige nihindrabuta salchandrabu hiro yo mare senti tembo nebajela kogi yore hine sungi yore hine ti tate tene nesha tela tene tai lontong jiwigi jushigi yore la tene hirap mepa imbichena nyemo ba pompege nyembondrabu hiro yungi yo mare tate sungi yore re la tene tanda kondo tembege tanda pentai jegom da boje na tele tini ti uni ji nelu hibe senji ngo tong de jeong madupe jeong madupa da sacha yihijin salwe gi cha yeba saltong songdun ju pa de salcha je yong yo re tanda hini jangba ina ti salcha de hiro yong yo mare la tini ta de ji so ta tanda long kapndar sung go on de se na tini tangbo lu ji ya da sung re la lu changbur sang se tini lu de changbur ya lu changbur sang ta ti ko de wa ngogi na ji pong se ta ngogi na ji pang sung de la tangbo de ta jin rimbo ngog na ji pong na yo ro ti gomb kap tana la na ji pong na yo ro de ngogi na ji pang kachung zi dang oji joa rongbap su ya se tene o de kora tujin kande tange yo na te ma to o ringbo la tong du tang wa tong tong la ring du tong wan da bo o gang ban da bo tende kaya ma yin rongbap su ya se ta te lu ji ya ta namba ye da bo je song re ta lu tang bur sang wa ke te nga ge na je bo wa ni ka chung zi dong wa som o ji jo wa rong ba su ya pa ge ye song ta ti ten do sem ge tene ya ta ta ba la sem ge kan de go ge yo re se na de pe ji mi ji sun ji de tan de pi cha la som lo hi do ma ta 단다 네베기 전 네바 춘춘 있나야 단당이 강트인 송고 단당이 가르치긴도 단당가 산데 네 송고 단당가 산데 간리 정송고 선반다고요 많이 받고 다 강야 마트에 받다고지 되네 마음 번다이 마스세는 지당 마음 봐 단다잔데지 그 공통된데 거기 요래데 있나야 단다 니값 드나라 간데 송게 요래세나 내 무수 생기데 tani ngin tindi gongi ta nga pe riba drimgi nga temba tengi nga hihin tengi sambanda boyo mahiba ko somo shido kanya matongwa tani depa tong maungpa niki chala somo matongwa tati teka tatawa tela tamalji hiba se tani kanya yapo la dupo la yapo zoa tomba mahimpa la tomba zoa ndabo ta tene je salwa mahimpa la salwa zo de pandabo mahimpa koran kare yapate te tamal ji hipa jemba se tamal ta tela koran kare yapate la tamal ji hipa sina te ta gewa me gewa la sopa namto kaya mepa koran teka la tene hipa jemba sena te koa ge somo tana te semta tene koani patala te si partanda boje yore la te mepa jemba sina teka koran kare tel shup ndabo kaya mepa jembe tento nyambar yapa tela ya zochu yonju mepa sen tene te ta yapoji gure sombanda boda ta dubo rindogundu sombege yapoji gure sombege rewanda boda duboji rindogundu sombege topanda bo go ne zochu mepa je yonju mepa sen yaje yada se pataba maimba rombap su ya se koran kare yapatinga na nyambar ka gure.
Of the 9 methods of resting the mind, these are 5 of the 9 methods, and these will be helpful for your meditation, and they will help you develop the stabilities, help you develop your tranquility meditation. Now, this is not really a situation where you have any recognition of the way things are. You don't have a lot of clarity. It is just merely resting stably. It's called tranquil, resting. Resting easily in there. And so that is what is. Now, when you sort of think about, and then on the basis of that, or on the support of that stability aspect, then we can develop the insight meditation. And the insight meditation is the meditation that has that has the wisdom. It has wisdom. Now, tranquility meditation doesn't have a lot of wisdom, and because it doesn't have a lot of wisdom, it is not really able to be a remedy for the afflictions. So it doesn't really work as a remedy for the afflictions. The resting or the analytic meditation of the Pandita, which we had discussed before, is different than this. The analytic meditation of the Pandita is coming to know really what is the nature really like. It's coming to know how it's seeing the essence of the mind, seeing that it cannot be established to be anything, seeing the clarity of the mind, seeing the union of the clarity in the and the aspect. Now, in tranquility meditation, we don't really have that sort of clarity, but it is on the basis of that we can develop the wisdom of insight meditation. And so then, following this come the instructions on insight meditation. And as they are taught here, they're first taught by giving us the points of the body. And the points of the body are, first, keep your body straight. So just keep your body straight. This is pretty easy to understand. Just sit up straight. And then the second is refrain from talking. And so when we say refrain from talking, you can refrain for a long period of time, or it might just mean during the course of your meditation session. In any case, refrain from talking. And then it says, open your mouth slightly and let the breath flow naturally. And so here, letting the breath flow naturally means just let your breath go as it is. Don't try to make your long breath into short breaths. Don't try to make short breaths into long breaths. Just let the breath flow as it is naturally. And so in this way, we have these 4 different points of resting the body. Keep your body straight. Refrain from talking. Keep your body straight is the first. Refrain from talking is the second. The third is open your mouth slightly. And the fourth is let the breath flow naturally. Following this come the points on resting the mind. And in terms of resting the mind, or placing the mind, it says, first, don't pursue the paths. And so here, it's not thinking about the path. It's not trying to remembering. It's not trying to remember, was I just resting? Was I just stable? Was that clarity? What was that just that I was meditating on? It's not thinking about that. It's not trying to think about or remember what we were just doing in our meditation in that way. The second, and then it says, and don't invite the future. And so we generally, of course, we need to make plans for the future. But when we're sitting in meditation, here it's a question of saying, okay, now I got to start. I got to start being mindful now. I got to start being aware now. Now I'm going to start being clear in my meditation. Now I'm going to do this in my meditation. We don't need to think about that in any way. And so in this way, we just simply rest in the naked, ordinary mind. And so we just rest now. We just look at the mind as it is right now, and we simply rest naturally in the naked, ordinary mind. It's not something, when we say ordinary mind here, it's not something where we need to take something bad and make it into something good. nor is it something where we have to take something that's not empty and make it empty. That's not how it is. We don't need to take something that's not clear and make it clear, or try to change anything in any way. We just rest in the nature of the mind as it is, without any thoughts that are virtuous or non-virtuous or anything like that. Just directly and nakedly resting in the nature of the mind as it is. And so, as the mind is, and so when we say here, naked, resting in the naked, ordinary mind, normally we sort of think that there's some sort of distance between, or some sort of separation, a gap between our mind and our understanding. It's as if there's some sort of gap here. But here it's saying that there's nothing between them. It's like there's no clothes coming between them in any way. And so here, there's no clothes, and you're just resting directly on it as it is, without trying to correct it or replace it. And so we aren't worrying, oh, is this right? I need to make it right. Or we aren't thinking in this way, oh, my meditation's bad, I've got to make it good. We aren't trying to correct it or make it right in any way. And then it says, or replace it, or place it again. So it's like we're not trying to alter it in any ways, take it and put it here again. But we're just sort of letting it be natural as it is, just resting naturally in this naked, ordinary mind.
Tene ta tende si yo na tel ta ti tu na tene chorwanda bo kande yungre se na jisom dasom jidrin dedrin jiga ndaga jidu ndadu me ba se ta te nde somgendu sombanda bo da nde somgendu sombanda bo da nde trengendu mandu tene che ga de banda bo du de banda bo kanya yo mare la Kanya yo mare te yinaya sem ke korang tongsha de kande yo are sena semni sale sena salchal ko yo salcha sena salpo salwa sena chei we ndabo tendel ko yo mare ka la salwa se du salwe ke tseti we ndabo tendel ko ju ndabo da pe mesibe we barwa ndabo tendel ko ju nyanka yo are te tinde mare Tela karirisiana semga hakowa to hibate hi himba sa tene hakoge yore ti jenki yomare ngaranzu donda bochi tsani rege yomare donda bochi mrebate seni salvo wale sena ten tonge yore ta ti hakoge yore tene rige sena tengusu ngusinge yore mato tene ma yinla la menla la ndabo mahimba Jene wa yebanda jene sena tekal tate te ripi gone dupanda boda teni pata rimbo ne songlo tong depanda bo mahimba tekal tanda yajo kondo jemba senkinda boda jerbo senkinda boda tende yebate ripa yen tate titaindo tate kurang senje nelu direla titaindo teni nyambari kago yore
And so if you rest like that, so if you're resting like that, what is the feeling that will happen? Your mind essence is clear and expansive, vivid and naked, without any concerns about thought or recollection, joy or pain. And so when this happens, you won't be thinking, oh, this is what it is, that's what it is. You won't have any thought about like that. You won't think, oh, that's nice, or oh, that's not so nice, or that's bad. There won't be any thought at all like that. But you will sort of see the mind. You'll see the mind, and so it'll be clear. Clear and expansive, vivid and naked. So clear, here when we say clear, this is like the clear aspect of the mind. That is what we mean by saying clear. Sometimes it's also translated, the same word is translated often as luminous. And when we think about it being clear or luminous, we think there's this big light. It's like there's this huge, overwhelming, bright light that we're seeing. We think that there's a danger that we're going to think of it as being this bright, brilliant light, being like that. But that's not what this means. What this means is that it can know, it can understand. And so at the same time as it's knowing, it understands. It doesn't stop. we don't become like some sort of rock someplace. That's not what happens. There's this clear, knowing aspect of the mind. So it's clear and expansive. And so expansive here means like we can see things. We can see a lot of things. So it's clear and expansive. We can see and know things. And then it says vivid and naked. And so vivid, it's like we're really seeing. It's right there. We're actually seeing. And there's no doubt, oh, is this it or is that it? It's just right there. We're seeing it right as it is. And it's naked. So it's not something where it's like we're thinking about it with logic or we're seeing it from far away. It's like we were talking about before. It's naked. It's got no clothes. It's just naked here. And so it's within this that we rest. This is the essence of the mind, and we just rest evenly within this. And so we will leave our Dharma session here this afternoon. If you have any questions, please ask them.
Thank you, Rinpoche. When sometimes it seems in the tranquility meditation, there comes in dullness, and so I wonder, is there a risk of learning that dullness? And then on the other end, sometimes it seems when you look at the nature of mind, sometimes there's fear, and or the thought of fear comes up, and I just wonder if you could talk about those two things.
Dile 신에게 kapsu kapkala ani chingwa yongdwa. The chingwa yongdula and the dila ani chingwa la gombagi karisaka nyenka taboyina. Chingwa la gomba ra de la komna komshe dabochai gi nyenka de chikche nipa de ani fatong ka semgi nelu tabe ka so kakala ne chita yongdu siana chitaki namto tabu ke yongdu tini degi korla ne tes kalop nano nas
tene tanda jingwa de la 야나는 님보팅 지와디 좀 값을라 테네 제 산지기 연된다 보팅 강게 팬다 보팅 테네 루보야 상 테네 데시 슬보시 다 테네 성요 알아 잖아 잖아 슬보다 보지 리파테 루보테 시 드럼나 팽그레 다 테네 성요 알아 테네 디게 님부가 도 토근 도나 님부가 도 토근도 나 테진 성요 다 텐데 신네 테네 인라 라 멜라 라 텐데 라 몬드 용도 감나 테네 테지 야부요 말이다 텐데 성요 알아 테진 성요 다 텐데 신나 야부레 대신화가 님버지 테네 런통 그 가서는 지도제야데 테지 조주다 좀 잡아보지 인지래 해 삼아보지도 테지 좀 루보에 좀 사 테지 좀 텐데신 tinta 단단디 나도 롬밥스 루발이 요나 테네 거 대가라 대가시 요나 레 셈바데 레로 메바 레데 요나 테네 딘지도데 이용고 말해라 테네 양갑가라 라면 안존다 세 손뎀다 야보세나 테네 딘지도데라 팽그라 지도데 팽기요라라 테네 다제 갑갑라 두존도 somno tontonla tenko senji nelu de takala gongi yore mato tatela togu be junsen kaya yo marela tinti junsen dabo de yabo je hakona ya big pengrava.
In terms of the dullness, The best thing is there are two things you can do. The first is to use the remedies for dullness. And when you use the remedies for dullness, the first thing is to think about the qualities of the Buddha. Think about the benefits of meditation. And then let your body be a little bit cool. Meditate in a cool place. Maybe tighten up your body a little bit. These are doing it through your behavior, and these should help. So if you tighten your body and do this should help with the dullness. And so if you can use the antidotes and they work, then great, use them. But sometimes it doesn't work and you can't do it. And if that happens, then just sort of take a break. Take a little break, because if you don't take the break and you keep slogging through it and you really get habituated to the dullness, then that is not very good, it is taught. Then in terms of the fear that you're thinking about during insight meditation, what's probably happening is that you are being too tight. Being too tight in your mind, too tight in your body. And so here what is said is that you just are resting, simply rest naturally. So just simply, naturally, easily let yourself rest in there. You just sort of directly, straight away rest in there easily and naturally. You don't need to have any hopes about anything, no need to have any fears about anything. And you should realize, and if you do this, then you probably will not feel as much fear. It'll also help you to do a bit of guru yoga practice, to do some guru yoga practice and to supplicate the Lama well, and that should help you deal with your fear. And then also, sometimes it's when you don't really know what you're doing. So usually we need to think about, when we think about the nature of the mind, we need to think about what it is. And so we need to really come to understand it. And so if you if you think about the nature of your mind and study about it a little bit, this will help you realize that there actually is no reason to have any fear about it. So you should just study a bit more about it.
Rinpoche, are we being asked to recognize that which experiences the resting mind and the movement of mind? That which experiences co-emergently the co-emergence of emptiness and appearance.
Die kannst du eine semgi necha di nyonghen da ni juchagi so nyamsu nyonghen de la ngudzingonas ngochogonas yana de ane nanto khenke ane ki token de ngochogonas
Kandisiri jad jisam.
da nga de la ane chidan de neto la tawa kausa de yang judo la tawa de sula ne de sula ne karesko sugi de la taken ge ngô de ngotrogana trabo inas
Takin ta tasandabo hidro somo matama chi taga lepa yoga bra. Tanda mengo dila lepa yoga de lupa yona tini til zochu kaya maimba de ngohi zamjingoma nyambari gapan del kogi yori.
Here, it's not really looking for someone resting or some place or it's not here. It's not a case of looking for who's looking or what you're being what is being looked at. Rather, here it's just a case of relaxing. Just relax and rest here in the nature of the mind. Just be loose in that, not trying to alter it in any way at all, but just merely recognize what's going on.
Koran semtela zogu yo mare. Nepala, manepala, nepa zogu yo mare. Tene joala, menjuva zogu yo mare. Koran ngo de haku gu yo mare. Koran kande yo pate. Te tekala yo na. Tene til juju meba che ngo le nyamri kapal.
You don't need to do anything to the mind. We don't need to change the mind in any ways. We don't need to make something that's not resting rest. We don't need to make something that's moving not move or in any way. It's just know it. Just look at it as it is. Understand it as it is and just rest within that. Not trying to do anything. Just resting right in it.
So it's simply being within the context of everything that happens.
근데 그래서 네 차상게 그래서 추탐제기 중국이 시다원 아니 잉다원 알아 옆다고. Yeah, it's probably like that.
Rinpoche, yesterday you spoke about co-emergent mind and co-emergent appearances and co-emergent thought and co-emergent mind essence. And, well, I've heard before about co-emergent wisdom. And that's a lot of co-emergence. And I just wondered if you could explain what you mean by co-emergence and what the meaning of that word is.
No, the non hunchik kepa, semi hunchik kepa, the hunchik kepi shed, or when a hunchik kepa, the maboshit doa, the hunchik kepa, the guys.
Hunchik kepa, think it, then now again, Netan, Mohiba, the Sardu Chuma Maimpa. No one quaranta nyamdo, yepa, hunchik kepa, said Nyam the Juanda, whatever, whatever. Seni lenji jiba singin de senji nelu de to na yanda mato na yanda senji nelu de sen koranda nyamdo yeba di nelu de nyamdo yeba di kaptana la yorela di yeba de seni lenji jiba de namto lenji jiba singin de namto koran jiba kapta ni de namto de pa yo tene yihi de zoro jong anda ba mai 대단 냠도 예빠가 고아인 비스나 남도 렌지 집어서
When we say co-emergent, that is that. Okay, when we say co-emergent, that means that at the same time as the appearances arise, we recognize the nature as it is. They don't happen separately, and so it's together with the appearances. And so here, co-emergent means that it happens at the same time. They arise at the same time. And so when we talk about the co-emergent mind essence, that means that it's not a question of realizing or not realizing the mind. That realization, whether or not we realize the mind or whether or not we don't realize the mind, the realization of the essence of the mind arises at the same time as the mind. They come together. So we see the essence of the mind is not happening at a different time than the mind. The essence of the mind is not happening at a different time than the recognition. They come together at the same time. So that is the co-emergence of the co-emergent mind essence. And when we talk about co-emergent thoughts, when we say co-emergent thoughts, what that means is that it's not as if, like when a thought happens, so this thought happens, and then we throw it away, and then there's wisdom that happens at that point. That's not how it happens. How it happens is that they happen together. The thought and the wisdom happen at the same time. They arise at the same time. And so that is the co-emergent thought.
Tene tanda manam te na
All right, let's do the dedication prayers.
To